And good afternoon, everybody. I've been asked to present with a focus on the financial suite, GLARAP. I will briefly mention some of the tools in ICOEPO, but the demonstrations today, which will be about 2/3 of my time today, will be on the financial tools. So before I start and with the slides and a live demonstration, I wanted to quickly call up a brochure that we have on our website, which is pretty easy to find. And it describes in 1 or 2 sentences the main features of each of the programs that are part of productivity tools. And you can see there's 1 module per page. And there's live links so that if you click on the name of the program, you will see a user guide. And if you click on a video, you'll see a short video, typically 2 to 3 minutes on our YouTube channel. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because you might see names of programs today that might interest you. Most of my demonstration today can also be seen by playing these videos. So we're trying to make things as self-demonstrable as possible. So TaiRox Productivity Tools is a single product with 53 different programs in it. And often the first challenge for everybody is to understand what's in it. So I'm going to try and categorize the programs today, demonstrate a few of them, and then indicate programs that are much like them. So you'll see that a lot of the programs begin with the verb extended, and then, with the word extended, and then the other ones typically have verbs like delete, update, apply, and so on. So any of the programs that start with extended pretty well means that the program takes over a Sage screen. So our program starts, launches a Sage UI, and then would overlay buttons, add columns to a grid, and do other behaviors. And almost all of the extended functions include internet-like searching, which I'll demonstrate today and which we call smart finders. The other way to think about some of the programs is often there is an operation in Sage 300 that you can do one at a time, but you can't do hundreds or dozens at a time. For example, I can update an order and change one item into another item, but I can't do that to 100 orders at the same time. And then the other third of the programs, or the other category at least, is usually around inquiry or status, and I'm going to show a couple of those today that relate to the financial suite. So I'm going to roll into the demonstration shortly, but first I'm going to tell you what I'm going to demonstrate. So I'm going to demonstrate the top program on this list, Extended General Ledger Accounts. And all of these other extended programs will perform a similar function. And that function is support for multiple Sage 300 companies. So if I have 5 or 10 or even 500 Sage 300 companies, I want the same chart of accounts in each one. And let's suppose I'm adding 5 accounts to my chart of accounts, and now I want to add that to another 50 companies. I don't want to go through all the same steps again. I just want to do the copy operation. So I'm going to demonstrate that today. And there's similar functions for copying customers, vendors, or inventory items. For example, if you're a construction company and you create a new Sage 300 company, for every building you're involved in, you might want the same vendors copied across. And then some of the extended functions, I'm not going to demonstrate this today, but if you look at our extended purchase order or extended order entry screens, you'll see examples of all kinds of buttons, each of which represent functionality that we've added, or smart finders, or columns to grid. In terms of the hundreds of operations, you can think of these in 2 different ways. some of them are simple little cleanup operations. For example, I might have orders or purchase orders that are 3, 4, 5 years old, and they still have items on order or items on purchase order, and really those are never going to be filled. So we've provided a tool that would let you, for example, to complete all orders that are 3 years old or older. So the simple cleanup, and then there's reasons people, especially in the operations suite, would buy productivity tools. And I'm just going to show an example of one of those. There's 13 different ways you might want to update all of your orders. And for each of those, you can apply that to a list of items or a single item or all items. And then in terms of inquiry, I'm going to show vendor inquiry today. And rather than show you slides, let's go to a live demonstration. So I said I was going to demonstrate extended GL accounts, an ability to copy accounts between companies. So you can see I've got my productivity tools here. It's integrated on the desktop. And then each of the modules has a number of functions. I'll look at the general ledger functions and launch extended general ledger accounts. And you can see this looks the same as the Sage screen because it is the Sage screen. And all we've done is overlaid a button here. So let's suppose that I was adding 5 new accounts. I'll add one just to show what it's like. Let's say it's a new bank account. And it will need a structure code. Yeah, that one will do. It's a debit account. It's a balance sheet account, and account code 1 will do. And so this is all just Sage 300 operating in the way that it normally does. I've now added an account, and let's pretend that I've added 4 more. And now I want to copy those 5 to other companies. So first of all, you can see a search grid at the top. Ignore that for now. And on the bottom grid, you'll see all of the accounts that I've added or modified during my session. And then if I say I want to select all of those and copy them, I can then pick which companies I want to copy them to. I can select all of them or select none. I'm just going to select one for the purposes of the demonstration. And now click on the copy button. Make sure I've got a user with sufficient rights, and that's it. It's done, and I can look at the log. So a fundamental property of all of the productivity tools, if we're doing potentially a lot of things, we always keep a log of what was done and what was not done. So that's a very simple demonstration. But what I wanted to show you now was something a little bit more complicated, and also what happens if I do something wrong. So I'm now going to, I've got a range of accounts here selected, and I'm going to load them all. And now I'm going to say, I want to substitute a segment code. Which segment? Well, the second segment, the division. This is sample data, so I'm going to change the segment code 100, and I want to generate this not only in other companies, but perhaps in the same company I'm in right now. And I want to add to 300. And of course, if I tab out of that field, it's going to say 300 doesn't exist. Well, that's one reason why we have extended segment codes. Sorry, wrong button, excuse me. If I added another segment code and saved it, and now I went back here, you'll see, okay, now it likes 300, and now I'm going to select all of them. And you can see that if I'm copying and substituting division 100 to 300, that doesn't make sense for a lot of these things, like this one and this one and this one here, because there is no segment company. But let's say I miss one of those, and I click on copy. Again, I can select many companies, but I'm just going to copy one. And now you notice that the complete says, but says errors where reported, see log for details. Now, if I look at the log, you'll see that the division segment code 300 doesn't exist in the target company. And you can see what it's doing is it's logging into each company, applying the operation, logging off, and moving to the next company. And of course, maybe my segment 300 doesn't exist in all 50 companies. So that's why we have extended segment codes, so that if I wanted to copy the segment codes, I just want to copy 300. Again, I can copy it using the same kind of operation. And that's why we have extended segment codes, because again, if you're adding a segment, you might want to do that to multiple companies at the same time. Now, if I go back to my copying of the general ledger accounts and try again, look at the log. Again, you'll see that, yes, now there is a segment 300, and notice that some of the accounts are inserted and some accounts already exist, so are not inserted. And then there's a total at the bottom, 8 accounts inserted, 2 accounts not inserted. So this is a principle of all of our programs. We try and keep track of what has been done. If you're doing lots of things, in case something goes wrong, you can figure out what has gone wrong and how to correct it. So that kind of copying operation applies to many different things. Since I'm looking at the general ledger tools now, let's have a quick look at an inquiry function, accounting status. Some of the TaiRox productivity tools products are extremely simple. All accounting status does is looks at every module and adds rows where it looks like there's something that should be done before month end. So before month end, you might run this program and you might see that, oh, there's invoice batches that need to be posted. Maybe I should be posting them, or sorry, creating them. And there's various drill downs. So I can click on an item and look at the purchase orders that are currently sitting there not complete. And that's a very simple program that we've added. Some other functions very simple would be to produce a 2-page user report that shows all the users and all their rights using English, not the funny codes. And it's not a 60-page report. It's a 2-page Excel spreadsheet, which you can save. I wanted to have a look now at accounts payable quickly. Let's look at vendor inquiry. So most of you, I would assume, are familiar with customer inquiry, and vendor inquiry looks very similar. It's a collection of 20 tabs that have all the information you might want to be looking for a single vendor. And that would likely be purchase orders. So if I click on an item on the top, you'll see a purchase order, and on the bottom, you'll see the details for that purchase order. Similarly, PO receipts for that vendor, PO invoices, and so on and so on. I'm not going to go through and look at all of these. You can certainly look at the user guide, and they're described. That would be an example of an inquiry function. Since I'm on accounts payable, it looks like I've got enough time to have a quick look at, again, a very targeted program. You can create payment batches by establishing a criteria, but there was a customer of Sage 300 who had 5 people doing nothing all morning but creating payment batches for different vendors, and then doing a system generation, and then waiting while somebody else approved that batch. And so, of course, you realize that because Sage 300 can only have one system generated batch at a time, they were kind of blocked. And so all this program does is something very simple. It generates a system batch and then puts Sage 300 into integrity checking mode so that it can change the status from system generated to open. And you can sort of see this by looking at the user guide. All of our help manuals would show a user guide for that particular program. So some products have got a lot of stuff in there, some not so much. I'm going to look at accounts receivable and just look quickly at apply documents. So a lot of our UIs have filtering up at the top, so I can select a range of customer numbers and then click a load button. So this only shows a few payments and a few invoices. As I click on the bottom, or on the top row, the bottom row shows the invoices that that payment might apply to. And so a situation would be manager of an apartment building deposits checks, so they're payments, but somebody else applies them and they don't want the building managers to have that many rights. And so there's a lot of payments and a lot of invoices. How can we match them up? Well, you can see this is a payment of $840. You can see on the bottom, well, there's it looks like that's the whole total. So I could just auto apply. Now, if I look at the second payment, okay, it's a payment for $250 and it applies to one of these. And of course, you can apply on the top or on the bottom. Yeah. And then by clicking process, I've simplified the payment process, the application of a payment to an invoice. And I know I'm running a little short of time, so I want to show one more thing, and then I'll field some questions. I promised to show you our smart finders, so how do they work? Here's an extended customers UI, and you can see we've added some buttons like an address button that would go to Google Maps, an email button that will email the person, and a website button which would go to their website. But we've got a customer number button here, and that's just the Sage 300 label changed to a button. And when I click on it, let's suppose I type Ron, and you can see that it's found customer Ronald Black, customer Ronald English, but it's also found people in Toronto, and it's also searched the ship to locations because some people think of their ship to locations as a customer. So we're searching all of the text fields at the same time. The address fields, the phone number fields. If you just know the phone number of the person, type it in and we'll go and find it. And just to give you a little bit more data to look at, I just typed in B. So if you're in an internet search and you get too many results, what would you do? Well, you might type another letter, or you might type a second word. San Diego, until you narrow it down, and then you can select that. So that's a quick look at smart finders. Now, I think that was pretty much what I wanted to cover today. So just a quick review. There are 53 programs and productivity tools. You get them all. Typically, people buy productivity tools for one or two reasons and then find that there's a half a dozen programs that are of value to them. And again, to remind you that a lot of the demonstrations I've done today and more or less are going to be in that PDF brochure. There will be a link to a short demonstration very similar to what I've done today. So I don't know if any of you have typed questions into the chat window for Stephen, but if you have, I'll try and field those now.
Yes, so at this time, we'll give you guys about a minute to write in some of your questions. We'll read them out loud and we'll have Donna answer. So we'll give you a minute or two for a second. Okay, Don, we have one question that came in. It says, since there's a lot of TaiRox tools, is there a way to filter or only see a few of the programs?
Yeah, and you might expect that's a very common scenario where people say, I don't want people to run that kind of a program. It's too powerful for them. Or I don't want to confuse everybody. I just want to add 3 or 4. So there's 2 answers to that question. One is if you use Sage 300 Security, there is a security resource for each of our programs, so you can hide it that way. However, there's quite a few Sage 300 implementations that run without security. So what we've done is we've got an options screen here, and I can click some of the tools or a whole module, and then if I save that, it's disappeared from the menu. Oh, sorry, wrong. If I want to put it back again, it's pretty easy to put it back. And you need to be the administrative user in order to do this. So that's 2 ways of doing that.
Perfect. The second question that came in, it says, what Sage versions are supported with the productivity tools, and are they supported with the new 2020 version?
And I'll answer that question by going to our website and clicking on Productivity Tools page. At the bottom of all of our pages, we show the Sage versions that we're supporting. So generally speaking, we support 5.6 through 2020. And you can see in the case of Productivity Tools, we have a single download, and you would either install Setup 2017 to 2020, or you would just install Setup for versions 5.6. And we're a little different than most third parties who are version specific. When you run our program, it will self-adjust. And that means the program looks to see what version of System Manager is present. And based on that, it will launch the appropriate Sage user interface and do the appropriate things.
Sounds great. So far that's all the questions we have. We'll just wait a little bit more, see if anyone wants to do any last second questions. If not, we'll wrap up a little bit early. Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Again, everyone, thank you for attending our webinar Wednesday. If you do have any questions, please email us at am@acumenfl.com, or you can always give us a call at 407-965-2411. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook on our social media. We'll also send out this webinar since this is recorded, and we'll also send out the brochure that was in the beginning of the presentation. Again, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Don, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Steve.